Okay, in this video we're going to discuss the Finnish use of the Mosin M91 rifle and why they chose the M91 style rifle to equip their army in their newly formed country. Now, watching the other videos prior to this, we know that Finland ended up at the end of World War I as a new country. It had to form an army, and it had to pick a weapon for standard issue. Now, also another thing, you'll hear people like these old Mosin 91s they have an SA stamped on them. They're going to say, well, that's a Finn capture. Well, what I'm going to do is we're going to go and we're going to read off of the Mosin Nagant website on the article written by a fella about M91s used by the Finns. And in reality, they really didn't capture a lot of these. After they broke away from Russia, had their civil war, there was a number of them that were left in the country that they had. And it'll all be explained. I'm going to go get a screenshot and I'm going to read the information that kind of explains all of that here next. Okay, hopefully you can see this better. And this is from mosinNagant.net, and it's the Mosin Nagant 1891 in Finland. So they give a history, just like I've reviewed, of how Finland ended up a nation. So now when we get down here to this area, it says one of the first issues facing the new nation was forming and arming its armed forces. Finland's armed forces were formed into two main branches, the Finnish Army and the Civil Guard. While the command elements of these forces were mixed, it is important to note that the independent organizations were both undertaking armed designs and development. In Finnish depots there was a great mix of small arms, which included, but not limited to, various Mauser rifles, German and Swedish, Japanese Arisaka rifles and carbines, Austrian M95 rifles and carbines, and even a small number of British Enfields and Swiss Vetterlis. Even with all of these types of arms, the largest type in the Finnish control was the Mosin Nagant M91, numbering over 190,000 rifles. As the Finns had inherited so many M91s, it was an easy decision for Finland to adopt these rifles as their standard issue rifle. After the M91 was accepted as standard, Finland began to purchase M91 rifles from other nations and add to their inventory. These purchases began in the 1920s and continued into the early 1940s. Most of the purchases coming from various nations which captured or were issued Russian M91s during or after World War I. Now here's your list of purchases. 1926, 39,900 were bought from Italy. In 1928, 13,000 from Albania. In 1928, 2,000 from France. In 1936, 4,600 from Hungary. In 1936, also 2,900 came from Poland. In 1936 again, 10,900 from Czechoslovakia. Now, these were somewhat in pretty bad shape when they made that big purchase from Czechoslovakia. I heard somewhere about that. There was a large purchase, but the guns were not exactly in pristine condition. In 1939, they bought 56,500 from Yugoslavia. In 1940, 300 from Hungary. And in 1941, 12,300 from Bulgaria. So they were accumulating these guns from many sources, okay, over the years. Not so much captured. They had, like I said, 190,000 were left in country at the end of World War I. You got to remember, they were part of Russia. There were also over 30,000 M91s bought or traded for by Trans-Baltica OY from 1928 to 1934. These rifles came from a number of sources. Trans-Baltica also sold many of the Japanese rifles in Finland to Estonia and Latvia in the late 20s. The purchases and trades gave Finland over 173,000 M91s to add to their inventory. Okay, in the 1920s, the Finns began to upgrade and repair their various M91s in their possession, as many of the rifles were in poor condition and didn't meet their standards. By far the most common problem with the M91 was condition of the barrels, but the rear sight was also a problem. They were calibrated in the Russian measurement of arshins. These were problems the Finns would have to correct to ensure rifles issued to their forces would be suitable for Finnish service. The solution of the measurements was easily to correct. The Finns simply added numbers to the right side of the sight, showed the distance in hundreds of meters. In 1926, now everybody listen up to this, this is where we get the problem. The Finns also added a notch to the sight base by filing 150 meter setting. In many cases, the front sight was also replaced with a taller post, which was a great improvement over the Russian design. While these were somewhat uncomplicated solutions to the issue of accuracy, correcting the substandard condition of the barrels required a more drastic solution. Okay, so the M91s will stop at this point. The M91s were kept in service, and the three examples I have are two Russian manufactured guns and a Westinghouse manufactured M91 that just had the sights corrected and nothing else. They still have the original barrels and all that. Now, we go on to the M91s and the 1920s. This is where they rebarrel them. So we're going to stop here, go look at my two examples, or my three examples of my M91s, and then we'll go on to the next step in the modification that they've done. Okay. I had to go use my other computer. This TV screen's too big, you can't read it. But I read what happened there, and what it comes down to is you can see they more or less purchased a lot of these firearms, more than captured them. So the Finns were actively, for a period of time, buying all the M91s that they could get their hands on. Now, where that brings us to this is with the M91, our basic modification was just to the sight. They did a simple fix, and then they took it on from there. Now, the fact that this country did not have a huge manufacturing base, this is where we're going to get into what they did, and each progressive upgrade that they achieved with these guns, keeping the M91 style weapon as their standard weapon for quite a few years. Okay. So the next video, what I'm going to do is look at how they modified the existing M91s, because I have three examples here. These guns were made, two of them were made in Russia, and one is a Westinghouse. And basically they did the simple modification, is where they just modified the rear sight. That was the first fix they did. Then they kind of went on in intensity from there on, and we'll cover those different things until we get up to our M28 rifle.